The local study hall has some very strange rules. I would love to simply study at home, but it's tough to concentrate for more than a few minutes when your parents are arguing 24/7 in a cramped two-bedroom apartment. I'm the type of guy who needs to focus for hours to consider it productive. Despite everything, the screaming would have been more than worth it if I had anticipated the following events. The night of the incident was on a Friday. It was 4 days prior to my final chemistry exam before Christmas break. I walked into the study hall at 11:43 p.m. and greeted the old man who was sitting on the information desk. He also happened to be the man who funded the study hall, so whenever he asked me to reiterate the mandatory rules, which was every time I walked in, regardless on whether it was my first time or 500th time, I had no choice but to do it. Let me get you up to speed with the rules. I'll spare you the details and only tell you about the most important ones. Make sure every single light in the study hall is on until you leave. When you leave, make sure the door sign says closed. When leaving, make sure you are illuminated at all times. Never, and I mean never, turn off a light that's above you. Make sure you're not in the dark either, not even for a split second. If it's still dark out, do not forget to lock the door when you walk out. If the sun's already out by the time you leave, I'll lock it myself. Leave it. If you hear any humming, ignore it. Do not go check or look at what it is. I never heard anyone humming outside of the study hall, but rules are rules. Never pick up the phone for anyone after I leave, no matter what. This never happened either. Do not stay in the study hall after 6 a.m. You're not allowed to come back until 9 a.m. After reiterating the rules that have been drilled into me more than the periodic table, I dapped up the old man before sitting down. I always sat down in the same seat. The first few hours went by in a flash, as always. However, I got disrupted at 2:30 a.m. This is because it is when the old man goes home for the night, leaving the massive study hall to myself. Today I chose to hang around for a little longer. Quite frankly, I didn't want to get another slap from my parents after realizing I got an A on my final exam. I had to remain focused and study for a little longer. A few more hours, which felt more like 10 minutes, went by. The clock had finally hit 5:55 a.m. I wouldn't have realized if it wasn't for the alarm I set for myself. Jolting myself back to reality, I began to set everything up to make sure I didn't upset the old man. He can get a little cranky sometimes. My brain was completely fried. My vision was blurry too. I packed my bags and turned off all the lights in the necessary order to ensure that I stayed true to the rules. I've done this so many times that I didn't even have to think about it anymore. As I opened the front entrance, I turned off the final light. Concurrently, the clock hit 6 a.m. It was still dark outside, as dark as when I came in at 11:43 p.m. Inhaling the cold, fresh air of the countryside, I juddered as I heard a loud, ringing sound piercing my eardrums. It was the rotary dial phone on the old man's information desk. "Shit!" I muttered under my breath. I didn't expect it to be so loud. I rubbed my eyes and yawned. Unfortunately, that only made my eyes feel heavier. I should turn it off before I call it a night. Taking a step back inside, I gasped as I remembered that I had to turn on the lights whenever I was inside. I did so accordingly before reaching out to the phone. Realization struck as one of the rules popped back into my head, making me stop. Never pick up the phone for anyone after I leave. Oh, right. I thought to myself, better for me to leave it. I sighed and scratched the back of my head. Can't wait to finally sleep, I told myself, yawning again. As I turned back around, my ears picked up on a sound from far away, a sound that kept getting louder by the second, although so slightly. Hum da hum ba hum ba dum hum. I don't know why, but the sound alone sent shivers down my spine, waking me up instantly. It echoed across the study hall. As it got louder, I felt an insane pressure weighing down on me. It felt similar to the pressure one gets during sleep paralysis. As I felt my chest being crushed, I deeply inhaled and exhaled. I looked at my shaky palms, eyes widened. What the fuck? I thought to myself. What's wrong with me? It was a strange sensation, one I had never felt before. Everything felt off, eerie. Suddenly, I heard a loud thud coming from behind me, the sound of a heavy object crashing onto the ground. Instinctively, I turned around and jumped backwards, screaming. On the other side of the hall stood a shadowy figure. It was over 8 feet tall. Its lankiness was towering over me, its arms looking long enough to reach out and grab my head. It's where the humming tunes were coming from. At that very moment, I felt completely unsafe, as if the figure was going to jump out at me. All I could hear was my heartbeat in my throat. "Oh, fuck this!" I shouted. Turning around, I bolted out of the door, not looking back even once. As I was running, I could feel something chasing after me from behind. Despite that, I couldn't hear anything beside my breathing and quiet grunts. As soon as I made it home, I slammed the door shut, locking it. Throughout the night, my mind was racing with different thoughts. No matter what, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was close to me, keeping an eye on me from nearby. Whenever I tried to close my eyes, I could see the figure rushing towards me at a speed I couldn't visualize. Before it would catch me, I opened my eyes with a loud gasp. However, the pressure persisted. Who was the figure standing on the other side of the study hall? It looked nothing like the old man. I eventually dozed off and woke up a few hours later to a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, you that kid who always goes to the study hall every night, right?" It wrote. My heart skipped a beat. I chose to ignore it. No way was I going to get in trouble because of some stupid rules. It must have been my nerves of the exam coming up. As I see the same number typing again, I blocked it. I had no interest in getting involved in whatever I saw yesterday. That night, I readied myself for another study session. I decided that I would leave the study hall at the same time as the old man to avoid a similar situation, which was 2:30 a.m. I wanted to tell him about last night, but I was scared that I would get in trouble. I nervously walked into the study hall and greeted the old man. However, something felt off. He was staring into my eyes a lot more intensely than usual. Even after I recited the rules again to reassure him, he didn't seem mad or worried, just off. I figured it was paranoia. No way would he know about yesterday, right? After all, I didn't break any of the rules, and he wasn't even there for most of the time. Right? I sat down on the same chair as last night. Discomfort grew as I glanced to see the old man staring right at me from his seat. I took a deep breath and put on my earphones. Minutes later, I received a text. It was from the old man. I had his contact saved just in case, so it wasn't out of the ordinary to receive a message from him. However, why would he text me when we were in the same room? "Hey, I wanted to let you know that I'm running some errands out of town at the moment. I think you've been in the study hall enough times for me to trust you alone for one night. Don't mess anything up, and I'll be back on Monday morning," it wrote. My heart stopped as I read it. I'm running some errands out of town. I started shaking, rereading it over and over again. I'm running some errands out of town. I slowly looked up. The man on the information desk was still staring right at me. The pressure I felt on my chest last night came back. The light started flickering subtly as my breathing became shallower and quicker. My body tensed up and paralyzed. Out of town. If that's the case, then who am I in the study hall with?